It takes time to build a culture of philanthropy. And so first and foremost, patience. But it's really about mission for nonprofits, regardless of the sector that you work in, higher education, healthcare, community-based organizations. It's about mission, relationships, and trust. Those three things are really most important in building a culture of philanthropy, both internally and externally with its stakeholders. And it's a very diverse group. And so you really need to be inclusive. And those would be the three things that mission, relationships, and trust.
Greetings, my name is Joel Lumdarcom. I'm a marketer, a journalist, a social impact creator, and most recently an author of Future Makers, a guide to 30 creative careers. You are tuned into EdUp Accelerated Excellence.
This episode of EdUp Accelerated Excellence is supported by the 2.0 conferences to be held in Las Vegas, Nevada, April 7th through 9th, 2026. Business leaders, educators, healthcare experts, marketing and tech professionals, and founding entrepreneurs are welcome to take part. Reserve your space today and receive a 15% discount courtesy of EdUp Accelerated Excellence with the code EDUPXE15OFF. That's EDUPXE15OFF. Check the show notes for more information or learn more and register online at the2conf.com. That's the2conf.com with the code EDUPXE15OFF.
Welcome to EdUp Accelerated Excellence, the podcast for the advancement of educational excellence and equity. And I'm your host, Jacob Easley II, PhD, PMP. And today's guest is the wonderful Michelle Maslowski, who is Managing Director at Carter, a leading organization in institutional strategy and philanthropy. So, Michelle, welcome to the show. Would you introduce yourself to the EdUp Accelerated Excellence community by giving name to your voice? And could you just give us a snippet or really quick elevator description of what Carter means to you?
I'm Michelle Maslowski, and thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Jacob. This is actually my first podcast. It's a real honor to be here. You do such wonderful work, so thank you for having me. I'm a fundraising consultant with Carter, a global leader in institutional philanthropy and institutional strategy. We provide counsel in fundraising, governance, and organizational planning. And we work in all sectors with all size nonprofits. And in my role at Carter, I focus on building and enhancing fundraising programs, pre-campaign planning, campaign counsel, board governance, annual giving, plan giving, major gifts, and coaching.
So, Michelle, thank you for that. So Carter really is bigger than philanthropic strategy, but leadership strategy in general, correct?
Yes, that is correct. We also work in strategic planning, organizational planning, and working with boards and board governance.
Oh, excellent. So I'm so excited. This being your first ever podcast, but I had a great opportunity to speak to you prior, and you were introduced to us by Eric Almonte, who is one of our past guests, and his work also is in development or fundraising or philanthropic endeavors. So we're so glad to have you. And you talked to me a bit about your career. You've had a very interesting career. You are also a professional athlete, and we're going to talk about that. So while you're a professional athlete, you were at Drexel, and you were a second all-time leading scorer and professional player in the European League, correct?
Yes.
Right. And so something happened at Drexel that led you to fundraising. Can you shed some light on that story?
Well, I was playing overseas professionally for a decade, and I would return to Drexel to train in the off season. And one summer, the athletic director approached me and asked if I wanted to take on a project. And it was to help engage our athletic alumni at Drexel. And what struck me immediately was the chance to give back. So I jumped at the opportunity to help in any way I could. And what I learned over that time period as I joined the team for the summer, when I met with alumni, was how much they wanted to give back and truly make a difference for who they once were, student athletes. And I know a lot of things have changed today, but back then we were just student athletes. And that's when I realized through that work that philanthropy is fundamentally about relationships, gratitude, making an impact. And that experience gave me a window into really how transformational it could be. And I knew very quickly that this type of work aligned with my own personal values and the type of second career that I wanted to have. I knew I could wake up every morning and feel really good about what I was doing.
So I really appreciate that. And I like this idea of gratitude and giving back. I think those go hand in hand. So you've been at this for about 15 years now in development work. For you, what does giving back look like now? So that was those early years of giving back, particularly to Drexel. But what does giving back look like to you now?
So giving back for me used to mean having gratitude for the opportunities that I had at Drexel, specifically what the coaches had given to me during my time there. And over time, it's grown into really a commitment to help organizations create opportunities for others, because it's not about us, it's about others, especially for individuals and communities that have historically been overlooked or the underserved. So today, giving back for me means more than that. It's about building systems, relationships, really a philanthropic culture that strengthens the organization long after my involvement ends, whether it's as a professional in my fundraising consulting work or as a volunteer as I serve on boards as well.
So that's really powerful, this idea of a philanthropic culture. And to be honest, I've worked in higher ed for a number of years. I've never really heard that phrase before. So if you were to speak to any organization, I'm in higher ed, but what would the top 3 things you would sort of enumerate or recommend that an organization pays attention to in order to foster or begin fostering a culture of philanthropy?
It takes time to build a culture of philanthropy. And so first and foremost, patience. But it's really about mission for nonprofits, regardless of the sector that you work in, higher education, healthcare, community-based organizations. It's about mission, relationships, and trust. Those 3 things are really most important in building a culture of philanthropy, both internally and externally with its stakeholders. And it's a very diverse group. And so you really need to be inclusive. And those would be the 3 things that mission, relationships, and trust.
And if you don't I think we have to keep that word that you started with, which is patience, because I think you're right. In order to develop a culture, it takes time, and you have to be patient with yourself, be patient with others, and in this sense, patient with the organization, as all the individuals tend to grow in that mindset around what it means to be grateful and what it means to give back in that relationship building.
Yes, and I would also add, I've worked in several sectors, and language, culture, and pace may differ across all sectors, but really the core remains the same. And, what changes is how each organization understands impact and measures that success. So, for example, in healthcare, it moves very quickly, it's metrics driven. Education is very relationship intensive and mission rooted. And then I would add that community-based organizations often operate with deep passion. However, there's very limited resources, but everywhere donors want clarity, they want authenticity. You had mentioned that earlier in the podcast, which is important in the nonprofit sector, and confidence that their investment will help people in the way that they had intended.
Yeah, I like how you broke that down, because education, community organizations, healthcare, those are the areas you've worked in, and they are different. And we often in higher ed, particularly when we have to partner with school districts, we talk about the difference in cultures, whereby school districts often will make decisions and move a bit quicker than higher education. We have a very deliberative, slow process of deliberation in order to get to an answer, or get to a response. So when you have worked with a difficult situation from any of those sectors, how have you been able to move a difficult client or a difficult campaign forward? And I'm going to double barrel this question. What have you learned from those challenges of perhaps a campaign that is not moving or as well as you would like for it to?
That's a really good question, very important. And when I reflect on my career, when I'd worked in Philadelphia and working with the underserved specifically, it was around equity and access. And what we learned very quickly is that we had to go in and listen deeply to the community, those that were most affected by the issues we were trying to solve. And so relationship building is how we ensure that philanthropy is responsive rather than prescriptive. You can't prescribe something for a community. You have to go in and listen. And so when we were, one story that specifically stands out is we were working with a community-based organization where the board members took the time to sit with families and listen to their lived experiences. And those conversations helped shape the case for support that we were working on in a conference room, and led to more inclusive programming and ultimately strengthened the donor engagement we were trying to achieve, because the story was rooted in the community's voice, not the assumptions on our part. And so there was a challenge in terms of putting this all together, but then when we realized that step was important and we did that, we started being able to put together a case of support that really resonated with who we were trying to approach to support the project.
And I think that speaks again to that second sort of suggestion, that second level, which was relationship building. And I like this idea of listening deeply to the needs of those who are affected by the solution you're trying to advance. Mm-hmm. That's really important. So when you look back, taking a sort of this aerial view of your work. And for institutions that are trying to build systems, what do you find to be the most critical or missing piece that folks need to attend to just for systems?
Well, fundraising can certainly help bridge systematic gaps in all sectors. And I had spent a lot of time in healthcare and education and was able to see this firsthand. So in fundraising, Jacob, we can shine a light on inequities that may otherwise remain invisible. And when we bring donors into the authentic conversations I had previously mentioned about barriers, whether it's healthcare access, educational resources, or safety net services, we are inviting, we're bridging that gap. We're inviting them to be part of the solution. So philanthropy can really accelerate progress where things fall short, if you will, and create pathways for access or innovation. And that's been my experience at two of the institutions that I worked at in a major city.
Excellent. So Michelle, when partnering with organizations that serve diverse communities, for example, so you talked about this issue of equity and multiple voices. How can fundraisers ensure that those voices and experiences and priorities are reflected in the campaign? So I know you talked about that, the community organization in Philadelphia, and listening to those stories. How can you see those stories manifest in the campaign itself?
That's also a really good question. Just like anything, it starts with listening and co-creating something. I had mentioned a case for support. That's the key in any campaign. After strategic planning of an organization, then it leads to inform the case for support, and it's a work in project with leadership and key stakeholders. And we can't design a case for support for a campaign. Again, like I had said earlier, in a conference room, fundraisers and leaders must engage community members early in the process. Some example of these things are focus groups, going out and interviewing, setting up an advisory committee so that a campaign reflects real needs, real stories, and aspirations of that specific community. And finally, I would say two keywords: transparency and humility are essential in serving any diverse community in any city. Transparency and humility are key.
And I think that speaks to the word you used earlier with this authenticity.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to EdUp Accelerated Excellence. This episode is supported by the 2.0 conferences to be held in Las Vegas, Nevada, USA, April 7th through 9th, 2026. Business leaders, educators, healthcare experts, marketing and tech professionals, and founding entrepreneurs are welcome to take part. Reserve your space today and receive a 15% discount courtesy of EdUp Accelerated Excellence with the code EDUPXE15OFF. That's EdUPXE15OFF. Check out the details in the show notes or learn more and register online at the2conf.com. That's the2conf.com with the code EDUPXE15OFF.
So we're speaking with Michelle Maslowski, who is Managing Director at Carter, a leader in institutional strategy and philanthropy. So Michelle, you are, I would say, a lifelong learner because you recently received your CFRE certification. So a couple of things. Can you first define that for us, and then what inspired you? And I think about this because when I work with young kids and they say, "Oh, you're still in school," they think we're old, and they don't understand why we're still pursuing educational endeavors. But what is the certification, and what inspired you to seek it?
Jacob, I am so thrilled that you asked this question because it had been a while since I completed my MBA, and during my transition from working for an organization into consulting, I had wanted to accomplish this. And so the Certified Fundraising Executive Certification is what CFRE stands for, is a globally recognized professional certification for fundraising professionals. And it really signifies mastery of best practices in ethical and efficient fundraising. And so I personally pursued it to deepen my own practice and demonstrate a model of professionalism for the organizations I serve and knowledge. The process for me reaffirmed my belief that fundraising is both an art and science, as we like to say. It's true. And studying those best practices, the CFRE best practices, ethics and strategy, reminded me how important continuous learning matters in our field, and really in any field. To be a lifelong learner is important. I really believe in education. So I would highly recommend the CFRE to anyone who would like to make a career in fundraising. But it's never too late if you already worked in the profession for over 20 years. It was a very rewarding experience, and I would highly recommend it.
Thank you for that, Michelle. So, fundraising, as I've come to learn, I don't think many of us who don't do fundraising know enough about it, or we have misconceptions. So for those of us who aren't as familiar with your work, what are some of those misconceptions, and what do you have to say to demystify them?
I'm smiling with you, Jacob, because you know what I'm going to say. It's the biggest misconception is that fundraising is about asking for money. And most people don't like to talk about it, let alone ask anyone. But what most people don't know is usually you don't have to, quote unquote, make an ask. It organically evolves when you're engaging a potential donor in a project. It's really about aligning values of the donor and the organization. It's about mission, and it's about impact, helping the donor and the organization make an impact. And so fundraisers' job is to help. I think it's really about helping donors achieve what they care most about while also advancing the organization's mission. And finally, when it's done well, fundraising is really joyful. It's a lot of fun, and it can be deeply meaningful for everyone involved. So unfortunately, there is the big misconception, and we all work really hard to try to tweak perspective for what it really is.
You're absolutely right, because when you get a phone call for one of those campaigns, often to help support the state police or, one of those state agencies, folks say, "Oh my goodness, here we go again." So I think that, it often is thought about as just raising money and less about the idea of relationship building. So I think if now I'm just not talking to you, I'm just speaking to those in general, particularly those when we get the cold calls. If it were about relationship building, I think all of us would be a bit more amenable to open our hearts and pockets.
Yeah.
So many people find their way into development work through completely different fields, as you did. For someone who's curious about going into fundraising, what suggestions might you give to them?
It's a very fulfilling profession, and I mean that. So if there's interest, start by volunteering, joining a committee, or even maybe shadowing someone in a development role. Explore a local fundraising workshop. They're out there. And I truly believe that this field rewards curiosity, relationship building, as we've talked about very often throughout this podcast, and mission alignment. And those three things are far more important than technical expertise alone. And a lot of your skills are probably transferable from what you've done before. And the skills can certainly be learned, but the passion and the values are what matters the most in this profession. And so if you have values and you have that passion and you're open to being coached, you're a quick learner, you could really do well in this field. There's a shortage of fundraising professionals, and the time is really now. There's a great need.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. And I did not know there was a shortage of fundraising professionals. So that's an open opportunity for anyone who's interested in fundraising. And again, we're speaking with Michelle Maslowski, who is Managing Director at Carter, a leader in institutional strategy and philanthropy. Is there a professional moment that stands out for you as meaningful, that reminds you of why you got into this work?
There were a lot of moments that have stood out for me. However, one of the most meaningful was seeing the full impact of a campaign early on in my career. The moment I saw students walking into a new building that donors helped fund, seeing their faces, hearing the stories. And that's when I understood that fundraising isn't all about dollars. It's about changing lives, creating opportunity, and building community.
I can imagine how that could have been very powerful. And what keeps you invested? So is it memories like that, or are there other sort of mechanisms you use to help you to maintain your positive energy? Because you have lots of it. We've met twice, and I'm always impressed by the sort of joy that radiates from the work that you do. So what keeps that fire burning?
That's a great question, and I'm not sure I fully understand it myself, because I have been known to work really long hours, and one of those people who gives more than 100% in everything I do. I think it comes down to growing up. Anything that I did, my father always encouraged me to give 110%, as they used to say. If it was possible to give more than 100%, then that would be it. And so I think it was just instilled in me at an early age that whatever I was going to do, anything that was worth doing to me, that I wanted to try to be really good at and put everything into it. And I think just some of the outside work, if you will, that I've been doing in terms of having a little bit more work-life balance, if that is a thing. I'm not sure I really believe that, but spending time outdoors, practicing yoga, going for walks, biking, I think it's helped me be more grounded and quickly get renewed energy, and most importantly, be present. Today, more than ever, people have a tough time for a lot of reasons to be fully present in the moment that they are in. And I've worked really hard at that. And I think that helps me. I wake up every day and, try to do something great. And whether it's joining you for this podcast or helping the next organization on their strategy to grow and expand and get ready for a campaign, I'm all in.
Well, I mean, that also speaks to, as we mentioned earlier, you're a lifelong learner. So after X number of years in the profession, going back to pursue the CFRE, and I did hear, this is sort of tangential, but you sparked something in my head where you talked about doing something sort of new and different and novel to take you away from, let's say, the work. Even though you said there's not work-life balance, I think what you described really is work-life balance, but it allows you to, when you go back into the workspace, that you can be fully present. And I heard that as we get older, time seems to move faster. And one of the explanations is because as we get older, we often don't have enough novelty in our life, like new learning experiences. And so time seems to move fast because we're sort of in this perpetual churn, as opposed to when you're in your undergraduate college years. It's almost every semester you're learning something new. Every semester you have a challenge because you're taking different classes. So I think you're onto something about how do we even slow down that idea of time moving really fast by continuing to challenge ourselves and to have new and novel experiences that help to stretch us, and in this case, I guess, sustain us through work-life balance. So, Michelle, what lasting impact do you hope your efforts will have on others in terms of people, organizations, and or communities?
Someone once said to me, it's not what you say to someone, it's how you've made them feel. And that really resonated with me. I want to leave people feeling good about the experiences that they've had with me. And I've always kept that with me. And so in terms of my work now, I just truly hope that I leave organizations stronger than I found them, with a clearer vision, stronger relationships, both internally and externally. And ultimately, it's all about confidence in whatever you do. So leaving them with more confidence in their ability to sustain the work they're doing, the organization's mission for the long term. Also, I hope the leaders I work with feel supported, empowered. That's a really important word. And better equipped to serve after our time together. And then finally, in my work specifically with Carter, and I truly believe this, that an organization's success outlasts our partnership with them. And that's really what it's about, for them to have continued success long after our time together.
So I'm going to ask a question which I had not thought of before, but as you were talking, this takes us back to systems. And I like this idea of the lasting effect. When you work with an organization, and we asked earlier about systems gaps, in your philanthropic endeavors working with them, do you find that you are in some ways preparing or training them for sustained growth in this area? And if so, what does that look like? And can you give us an example that a client that you've worked with and you've seen them sustain those efforts?
The word sustainability is mentioned very often in the work we do. It's so important that ultimately what an organization is doing is sustainable. And in this current environment, there's a lot of uncertainty in the nonprofit sector. And so more than ever, sustainability needs to be discussed and thought about. And I've worked with several organizations, one recently on a pre-campaign planning study. So that's ultimately preparing to get ready for a campaign, putting things in place so that the campaign can be successful, programs, strategies. But recently I had worked with a group of major gift officers for an organization, really coaching them, spending time on everything from their process, preparing for and executing meetings. And that coaching engagement that we had together was for a period of time, but hopefully that they take those strategies continuing their work, and that they stay with the organization long enough so that they can really make an impact, because there is such high turnover in our sector, especially with gift officers. And so the work of an organization is only sustainable as long as the right people are in the right positions and they have the right strategy. And so when I think about what I worked on recently with them, hopefully it'll not only pay off for their work now and for the upcoming campaign, which hopefully they'll commit to staying for, but then ultimately those will continue, those strategies, the work that they've done will continue and pay dividends long after maybe that they're even no longer at the institution.
Michelle, I absolutely want to thank you for this opportunity to learn with and from you here at EdUp Accelerated Excellence, where we seek to advance educational excellence and equity across traditional and non-traditional learning spaces and environments. And so we appreciate it so much. And I think we've all learned a lot.
Jacob, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun to do with you. And if anyone would like to get in touch with me, please don't hesitate to reach out. My email is mmaslowski@carter.global, or you could find me on LinkedIn. I would love to hear from you and even maybe discuss some of the topics we covered today.
And Michelle, congratulations on your first ever podcast. So you are definitely a star.
That's very kind of you, Jacob. Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for engaging with EdUp Accelerated Excellence, a member of the EdUp Experience network of educational podcasts. You can find this and other episodes on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Radio, YouTube, and other outlets where you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like this episode, don't forget to follow us and share within your network. To leave a comment or suggest a guest, contact us online at edupxe.com.
A special thanks to our research assistant, Emma Worthington, a PhD student of Fordham University's School Psychology program. And we want to hear from you if you have feedback on this or other episodes, or would like to nominate a guest. Contact us online at edupxe.com. That's edupxe.com.